So we are a timely group, and we certainly appreciate Trey taking his time with us today. So let me first start by welcoming everybody. It's great to have you here. Just so for those that are new to the Entrepreneurial Event Organizer meetings, we do these to really bring together the people in Connecticut that run entrepreneur-facing events. From these efforts, we've created a shared calendar that now shares events from about 30 organizations across the state, aggregates them into one place, and then we actually share those to about 50 calendars or 50 websites across the state. So the idea really to amplify all of the events that are going on, and part of that also allows us as event planners to see when we should run our events, what events are missing in the ecosystem, what events are redundant, so we can have more collaboration and cooperation as well. And you'll see we're going to organize this meeting in a way that we'll be talking about sort of our core topic for probably about 40 minutes, and then we'll thank Trey and move on to our own sort of internal topics for about the last 15 minutes. And so what we're going to do, the way we're going to organize this is I'm going to get things started with Trey in talking about sponsorships and selling and retaining sponsors. I'll have a few questions, and then we'll open it up. And as opposed to kind of our past format of having everybody introduce themselves at sort of at the outset, what I'd suggest is as you have a question, that's a great opportunity to introduce yourself. So say name, rank, serial number, and then ask your question. And certainly we want to format this so it's casual and fun, and we get the most out of this conversation. We will get into topics after we talk about sponsorships that I think are going to be really cool. You're going to see some neat things that are going on. We've had a team working on developing coordination of gateway events with all the application programs in the state, and there's some neat news there. We have a Connecticut Entrepreneurial Awards, which you've seen the nomination website for, and that's going to be real exciting. Those awards will be given in late March or early April. We're finalizing the venue right now, actually, and we have a neat topic for our next meeting as well, so we'll talk about that. Without further ado, let's hop into our topic, and I'd expect you will hear those beeps periodically. It's just people joining the meeting, and we'll bring them up to speed as we go. But I want to introduce our guest today. Trey Bowles is somebody that I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. He's been a phenomenal leader in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, not only in Dallas but across the country. He's built, co-founded the Dallas Entrepreneur Center. He was an original member of the Startup America Partnership. He also is a co-founder of the Dallas Innovation Alliance, and he just was asked by the Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, to join the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So he serves in a national capacity with that group. And Danny Breer and I have gotten to know him pretty well through an organization that we're a part of called Startup America. Startup Champions Network. I think I have to pay $1 now, right, Trey? I almost said the old name.
We'll get it. We'll get it. All of us still are stuck.
There you go.
Startup America.
I think we moved on to an electric shock.
Is it an electric shock? Yeah. Well, I'm in trouble then. So, Trey, welcome. It's great to have you here, and it sounds like it's a bit warmer in Dallas. This morning here in Connecticut, it's about 10 degrees, so we have people coming in with many layers on and joining us as we go, but welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I do wish that I was up there with you guys. I love Connecticut, so I used to go out there all the time when I lived in the city. My cousins were in Greenwich and some other friends in Darien and some other places, so I wish I could come visit you guys.
Well, please
enjoy that winter.
Come any time of the year. If you come in the summer, we'll take you sailing and feed you lobster. So that's, but any time of the year is fun for sure.
Perfect.
So would you mind just giving us a little bit of a thumbnail about the Dallas Entrepreneur Center? You've got 4 locations that will be opening up in 2017, but you've already opened several locations. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Dallas Entrepreneur Center and what you do?
Sure. Well, as I was sort of traveling around the country with the Startup America Partnership and looking at other cities and what other cities were doing, I kind of looked at Texas and said, Texas doesn't have anything like this. There's some tech-focused centers, some incubators, some accelerators, but nothing that was entrepreneurial-led and really focused on just helping an entrepreneur start, build, and grow a business and helping them teach them the basics, helping connect them with the right mentors, helping connect them with each other and creating opportunities for customer relationships and fundraising and things like that. So we launched the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, or the DEC as we call it, as sort of an experiment. We had a corporate partner that had a 10,000 square foot space and I said, hey, can we just use this space to see what happens? And they said, sure, well, you can use it. We'll allow you to have 30 people in here. And about 3 months in, we had 10,000 square feet full of people. So we thought, well, gosh, this is a need. And so at that point, we moved into a sort of distressed area of downtown Dallas, an area that had been the center of downtown in the 80s and 90s and had just sort of fallen off. And our hypothesis was if you put an entrepreneur center with creative, innovative entrepreneurs in it, it will flip the real estate in the area. And so 2 years ago when we moved to this location, rent was about $15 a square foot, and now rent is $35 a square foot, and 4 or 5 different major real estate development companies have bought up all the buildings in the space, and so we're seeing that go. But what we realized after we started this was that North Texas, DFW, whatever, I just call it Dallas for people that aren't from here, is a 9,200 square mile region, so it's humongous. And so it would be naive of us to believe that anybody in this 9,200 square mile region would drive to downtown Dallas to come to an entrepreneur center. So we said, what if we started building these in different locations around North Texas? And so our model is to partner with cities, economic development corporations or towns, come in and help them build out this model, and they help fund the model. And that's not through direct money to us. It's just through managing the costs of expansion through build out and rent and utilities, and oftentimes they put money up for the staff person we have. And then we have a 200-page blue playbook that we call the Worldwide Entrepreneur Center Affiliate Network Playbook, that we make available to any of our affiliates, any of our partners, and that's how that we kind of help build and grow these local, geographically local scenarios. And our model is the idea that in order to build a robust ecosystem, you have to make the entrepreneur the center of the ecosystem, and all of our organizations or stakeholders are the spokes. And we believe that a robust ecosystem isn't just about connecting an investor and an entrepreneur, although that's an important relationship, but it's also bringing in corporations, academic institutions, municipalities, chambers of commerce, media outlets, and so mentors. And so every geographic location we go into, we build that ecosystem in that geographic area. And as I mentioned before, we have 5 locations across Texas now, and we just announced 4 new ones that'll be going in the low-income areas of Dallas. And then I think we have 3 others that'll be rolling out in North Texas in the next year, and then we'll stop. We'll have saturated North Texas and start looking at other locations. But that's what we do.
That's awesome. Congratulations. So you at the outset, you said it was a corporate partner that sort of was the sort of founding sponsor to get you sort of an MVP, and now the model sort of, as you go to a new location, you have sort of an economic development partner that gets you in. What's the breadth of sponsors look like in terms of, what's the funding model look like?
Well, so currently 65 to 70% of our budget is covered by revenue from co-working. So each one of our spaces has some of they're similar in some of the elements that exist there. First, there's always a small or big event space. At our space in downtown, we've had 54,000 people come through the building in the last 4 years, so we keep it pretty active in terms of the number of events and programs we have. We also have a co-working space in all of our locations, which helps provide revenue to try to achieve sustainability, as well as we can best serve people that office here all the time. Because if we're constantly bringing in corporate partners and investors and stuff like that, whoever's sitting here in the building is the one that gets to meet them and gets introduced to them and promoted to them. And then finally, we have offices in all of our locations as well as open space, but one office is always dedicated to mentorship. And so that allows us to build a flow of subject matter expert, experienced entrepreneurs, business leaders to come in and help really take that company from an idea that it has and help turn it into something that's realistic and a going concern. So that's part of our revenue. The other part of our revenue comes from sponsors, mainly corporate sponsors, grants, which we're not really good at yet, and donations, which is a smaller percentage. And then we have about I don't know, $25,000, $30,000 a year we make in venue rentals at our different locations. But we believe that with as many spaces as we have, if we can do a good job of keeping them full and active, that we can be sustainable without needing sponsorships. We'll always have sponsors because it's a good way to get corporations involved in the process. But I also think as we get a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and a little bit more data, we'll be able to be more applicable for grants that are being given out from places like the EDA or Kauffman Foundation, or even city, state, and regional grants that are available. It's not easy though. We definitely would not exist without our corporate partners.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open it up to others. So you've had a good history of developing corporate sponsors, and I think that's somewhat unique within the ecosystem in general. When you look at appealing to corporate sponsors, what are some of would you say, the key ingredients?
Well, and this is something that most of my career I've built for-profit companies. I've sat on a lot of nonprofit boards and helped start nonprofits, but I'd never really run one. And so it's been a learning process for me to understand what corporations are looking for, because they aren't looking for what I want, which is, this is working, give me money, I'll put your name on a sign. They want to fund specific things that they're excited about, and that's like foundations. It's usually program-focused or issue-focused. So we have major partners that focus on our minority entrepreneur initiatives. We have partners that focus on our women entrepreneur initiatives, ones that focus on kids. So what started in the beginning is me saying, hey, you should support entrepreneurship and it'll look good to your customers that you're giving us money, is now what's your organization's thing that they get excited about? What are your causes that you support? And then I build programs to fit what the corporations want to fund. And then once you get them in and you do a good job of the first year, they tend to come back. And what I really realized is once you build a relationship with these corporations, they're sort of funding the organization. They have to tie it to a program, but they're really just saying, look, we like your organization. We think what you're doing is good. We need you to do this program. But as long as you check these boxes, we're happy. We don't care if there's not 1,000 people there. We don't care if you don't do this, this, or this. You're kind of in the circle of trust, if you will, and as long as you continue to deliver and execute the things that we've asked, then you move forward. And then you learn, too, with the different corporations, some things are important. So with AT&T and our diversity entrepreneur and minority entrepreneur initiatives, what was really important to them, or the department that was funding us, was they wanted local and state officials to speak at the events. And to them, that was a win. Not that there was 200 people there, not that we helped this many people get started or built this email list. It was, how do you get a city council member to speak to open the session? Because that's what they're trying to do, is develop those type of relationships. And so the morning of our last event, their city councilman bailed, and I was able to call and find somebody to come sit in. And that, in their mind, was probably way more valuable than the hundreds of hours we put in on putting the conference on.
I think that's called obsessive podium disorder, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, whatever itch they need scratched, I'm happy to scratch as long as it fits in with our mission.
Right.
And we're not going to develop a plan that doesn't support entrepreneurship or doesn't engage what we want to do. But typically, and the better relationships you get with these people, just like any relationship building process, is they tell you, look, we can probably give you this much money this year. We probably want to see these 3 things. And then it becomes a lot easier because you have that relationship, you know exactly what they want. And then what we do at the end to sort of maintain that relationship is that we take and once again, we're fledgling nonprofit. We go to this site called PictoChart, and we create an infographic for free of all the key points, how many people showed up, how many social media impressions, a bunch of stuff that they don't even understand. It just looks good on paper because the numbers are high, and we build that infographic and we send it to them. Then we also make videos of the events and put those together. And what you're really doing at that point is you're equipping, for us it's a lot of times the foundational people inside these organizations, you're equipping them as they go back to get money for next year to say, well, this is what our donee or our donation partner gave us back as a result of the project that we did. And so you're equipping that person internally to be able to sell for you moving forward. And so that's another thing that we try to do is whether you call them impact reports or some sort of overview of the project. But for us, I don't think a lot of other groups do that, and it doesn't cost us a ton of money. It just costs us a little bit of time. And they end up being able to circulate that internally and showcase, look at this, look how good of a partner I picked because they gave us all this results, based upon what they knew we were interested in. And so that's a lot of times how we create that relationship. And then inevitably, once that's created, every year there tends to be just a little bit more money. So you may go from $25,000 one year to $45,000 the next year. And next, one of our partners, I'm now going to go ask for $75,000 to $100,000 because we're growing a little bit each year. And that's just kind of the way it works. The sales cycle is long, and you just have to be persistent. You got to meet with somebody 20 times, and it may take a year and a half. But once you get them in and you serve them well, you can almost start to forecast that revenue in the future years because you've developed that relationship.
Cool. Yeah, I suppose you're taking in, as you provide all these post-event deliverables, the video and infographic and so on, you're sort of taking something that is intangible and making it tangible and easier for them to sort of quantify to either themselves or their chain of command in some way.
Right. Yeah. And you're trying to build relationships with the whole team too, because inevitably your contact's going to leave, and if you haven't built relationships across the rest of the team, then you may be out of luck for that next year. And so cultivating that relationship and doing a good job of checking in with the team and getting to know the team, it's really helpful in the long run.
That's awesome. So let me, I'm going to open it up to others. So the rules here, we might have situations where more than one person is trying to talk at a time. We'll try to piece our way through that. But when you're asking a question, if you would, please introduce yourself first. So name, organization, just a quick snapshot of what you do, 10, 15 seconds, and then the question. But that way we're handling introductions at the same time as asking key questions. So I know to my right, Danny Breer he's moving around a lot in his seat. There's something going on. I think he has a question. So Danny, what do you got?
Where's the bathroom?
Where's the bathroom? It's down the hall to the right. Trey, introduce yourself. I know Trey knows.
This is Danny Breer. I'm head of the STEMI Coalition, which is a nonprofit focused on formalizing invention and entrepreneurship education inside K-12 curricula. Trey, when you could put it a little bit into perspective, the sponsor maintenance that you're talking about, I mean, how many people do you have focused on selling to sponsors? How many sponsors are you trying to maintain these relationships with? Are we talking about a dozen, 2 dozen, 5 dozen? What's sort of the volume and scale and infrastructure that you've had put together to do that, and what sort of budget outcome are you getting out of that?
So to this point, I'm the only person that sells or maintains sponsorships. Okay. So it's just the nature of being a small fledgling nonprofit. All the relationships that we have, I've built over time, and I'm responsible for managing those partnerships and those relationships. We do have one person on staff who does events and programs, and so her job is to, once I develop the program, is to implement it and execute it, and that's takes up a lot of her time. But what we are just in the process of starting to bring people on to help handle it, because what we've done now, for lack of a better example, and you guys forgive me for this, but I call it the Jerry Jones approach to selling sponsorships. Now, when we sell sponsorships, I can sell American Airlines sponsorship at the deck, but I can sell a Southwest Airlines sponsorship at another location, and then I can sell 5 different attorneys because we have enough locations to do that. So I'm trying to now sell the network, so you can get one location for this much, you can get all the locations for 5 times as much. And so we're trying to develop those localized models. So now we've brought on a director to manage and serve the local affiliates, as we call them. And he's going to be out there selling sponsorships at a local level, which I think will substantially increase total revenue. I think we could probably make another $150K a year in sponsorships that way. But to this point, we haven't had a scenario where we could afford to hire somebody to manage those. The good thing is I don't pay myself commission, so I'm saving tens of thousands of dollars in commission. But it's also, I also manage sponsorships, grants, the locations, the expansion. It's not sustainable long term for one person to handle all this. And I think where we are trying to go now is to get, enough money in through a grant or one particular donor that I can actually hire some people, knowing that bringing on more people will help expand the amount of money that we can generate. But at this point, it's just me. And which really all that does is it's important in the end. When you started something, you're going to have to be involved in any sales transaction. But what it does is it takes a 1.5 year sales cycle, and where it probably could be 3 months to 6 months if you had somebody who could stay on top of it every day and have that be their primary focus. And so that's what we hope to see change. And continue to grow. And then after, doing this for a few years, people start to know who you are and what your organization does. And so it does make it a little easier to bring in sponsors. But the hardest part in a lot of these things is managing the activations that you agree to do for the partners. So making sure that they get in X number of emails that they're supposed to be in. You make sure that they get the mentions that they want, that they get all the things that you've committed to them. And right now that's my responsibility as well, but we're trying to do a better job of utilizing the whole team to make that happen. Does that answer your question?
Jamie, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. And what other questions exist?
I had a question about
Introduce yourself,
saturation. So this is Paige Rasted with the Connecticut Technology Council. I was interested in your vision for additional locations, and you mentioned the saturation point. It sounded like you have about 12 locations in mind over time. Is that right, Trey? Yeah.
Yes.
So have you had the experience where your model is being imitated? Do you have new private co-working spaces popping up Here in Connecticut, we're about half the size of, your 9,200 square miles. And, I think when I think of saturation or, key locations so that everyone can get there within a half hour, I'm thinking about 6 locations would make sense. So pretty close to your scale, too. When you looked at figuring out what that saturation point was, how did you come to that? Are you trying to get locations close to universities or other hubs? How did you come up with that target of 12?
Well, I wish there was some great scientific formula. Basically, 2.5 years ago, I thought, we should expand these, and I just went out and tried to sell every city that I could, assuming that most of them would say no. And so a lot of the strategy that we have was based upon who said yes. And so in some cases, our location downtown is maybe 10 to 15 minutes away from the next location. But we really do it by geographic area. So we believe and have seen that not unlike a major corporate organization, the company ends up being based by where the CEO lives. And so what we've seen here, and what we believe to be true, is that there are entrepreneurs in all different cities across the region here, and they're going to want to stay and live really close to where they work. So there's no question, is there hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs in each of these locations that we're going into. But for example, the difference between this location in downtown and the next location, those entrepreneurs aren't going to want to travel to one of the other locations, even if it's 20 minutes. And that has to do with traffic, that has to do with geographical location, has to do with sort of the makeup of the interstates and how that sort of splits the cities. And so what we tried to do is make sure that we weren't building 2 locations so close to each other that it would cannibalize itself. That was the first kind of standpoint. The other standpoint is because we don't pay for them, it really doesn't matter to us. Like, we wouldn't build one on top of each other, but if your expansion costs are zero, they're not zero, that takes an absorbed amount of time, a couple hundred hours to launch one of these things, and you know how much revenue you're going to generate from that in a given year, it's a great way to continue to further the mission and the model that we've created, but it also creates another revenue stream to help get us to sustainability. Because the one thing, when you're part of the reason that we are a nonprofit is that when you build a mission-based initiative where you say the entrepreneur is the center of the ecosystem and we're only going to do things to help them, then inevitably we're not going to charge them enough money to make ourselves whole. Therefore, we're going to have to entertain sponsorships, foundation, and grant relationships. And so for us, it's just another way to try to get to be sustainable as an organization. But there's not, we've done look at census information and look at the geographic location and where people are located, and the cities ask those questions. But in the end, most of these cities are a place where they've decided they need a co-working space or entrepreneur center because they read it somewhere. They just don't know how to do it. And so we're helping them achieve something that they're going to do regardless. We have more experience at it than they do. And so that's kind of how we've determined. We do have a location in San Antonio, which is not nearly as close to everything else, but that's, but when you look at even what we're doing in southern Dallas and South Dallas, which are both in low-income communities, but they're very different neighborhoods. And so a lot of it is based upon intangibles as well as just how many entrepreneurs are in that location and what are their needs.
So what other questions do people have? Anyone on the phone have a question?
Yeah, this is Tony Vengrove calling. I have 2 businesses, a marketing and innovation consulting firm, and the second business is a co-working space in New Milford, Connecticut that we're opening the doors in 2 weeks. So this is very timely, and it's in fact I'm joining this call for the first time in the space, which is exciting for us.
Congratulations!
Thank you. We're really excited about it. I I was just curious, simple question. I'm not sure if there's a big answer to it, but we're actually doing this as a for-profit business. So I was just curious as if you had a point of view whether the advice you shared about sponsorships here changes at all if it's nonprofit versus for-profit in your opinion.
I see for-profit organizations raising sponsorships and doing things like that. I think that it's a little bit different because the nature of the legal structure of the entity may confuse the ability to get a donation from a corporate foundation. But in the end, we have some of our corporate partners that just write us checks out of their advertising budget. It's really how they are. So I think it's definitely it's definitely an opportunity to try to still try to create those partnerships. I think what you'll find in your scenario is that people would more likely fund an event than they would your co-working space. And so if you can create events that support what they're trying to do, you probably can go get a sponsorship there, which then in turn accomplishes the same thing. But I also think, as a for-profit space, you have an opportunity to, either rent or own by the square foot and lease by the seat, which if you do that well can be a lucrative business model. There's a bunch of people down here who have co-working spaces that just owned a building and wanted to get the building paid for, and so they do co-working, and it basically helps them break even on the space. Other ones that do a little bit more in terms of programming, but we don't see the same level of programming and event focus from for-profit co-working spaces, from independent for-profit co-working spaces that we see from us, just because our mission is so different. And if our mission was literally just to put butts in seats, we would really just focus on getting people in the door and getting them in.
Cool.
Did that answer your question, Tony?
Yeah, it's kind of dovetails with how we were thinking about it, which is good. I think we were initially looking to go pursue sponsorships for the educational and event series that we were developing.
So right in line, it sounds like. That's great. So what other questions? And let's stay with folks on the phone. Well, if we may not hear you if you're on mute, so make sure you unmute to ask your question. Well, we won't hear you. How's that? What other questions exist? Okay, well, I'm going to go to my right again. Danny Breer with another question.
Hey, Trey, you mentioned that you had sponsors interested in sponsoring stuff for kids. Could you expand on that? What type of kids programs you guys are running?
Sure. Well, we do all sorts of different stuff. We partner with organizations like Nifty down here. We develop our own partnerships with charter schools or private schools. DISD, which is our independent school district, is a little bit more difficult just because of the hoops you have to go through to get something like that done. But we helped start a what's called a personalized choice school, which is a little bit different. It's focused on entrepreneurship, business technology, and innovation, and so we do some things with them. But once again, because of the time it takes to put on a program, build a program, we don't really do a lot of programs that we don't have funded, because we're just wasting our team's time and ultimately our money. So, but education in general is something that people really like to fund. A lot of the foundations down here get excited about that, and so if you can go in and develop a program that shows how you're educating people to be entrepreneurship. The things we do is we bring the students in and we teach them. A lot of these are low-income areas of Dallas, and the schools are going. We teach them that entrepreneurship is actually a career choice that they can pursue. We walk them through what that means, what it means to be entrepreneur, really explain that to them, show them areas where that makes sense. We lots of times have them come in and interact, build business ideas and pitch them from stage. We did something with AT&T a couple weeks ago where we built them a problem and they had to develop a business or campaign around the AT&T's don't drive and text kind of thing. And so we just try to get them in. We do lots of times we do lemonade stand stuff and things like that. Just allows them to see what it means to actually start, build, and run a business. And those are things that people like to see and fund, or there's specific initiatives or specific organizations that they fund, whether it's NIFTY, whether it's NAF, and then as you can put programs in around that. And then we have our own educational platform we built called Project EDU, and that's where we take it's about 9 2-hour courses, and it's everything from is my idea a business to the last class, which is how do I pitch my business to somebody. It's very high level. It's not an accredited initiative, nor are we trying to compete with universities. But what it is it's a crash course, a practical crash course in how do you build a business, because we get local mentors and subject matter experts to teach the classes, which allow you to have an interactive conversation with the subject matter experts. So you leave at the end of every class being able to have applied something to your business practically that'll help make your business move forward. And so we took that Project EDU curriculum that we built for post-education attendees and customized it for students. But in the end, unless we get somebody to come in and write a check for the initiative, we can't roll that out effectively as an educational program across a district, a section, or more than a school or two at a time.
Is Richardson part of your operational area?
Technically, yeah. I mean, we don't work with Richardson ISD, but it's technically part of what North Texas.
We do. That's why we may talk about some places might work together.
Great.
What other questions? So we have probably time for one more question. Someone on the phone have a question that they'd like to ask? Anyone else in the room have a question they'd like to ask?
I'd like to ask how you stay so skinny since you take your kids there for donuts with daddy all the time.
Good question. First of all, I'm not skinny. Second of all, I don't eat the donuts. So that's helpful.
The cutest thing on Facebook, though. Donuts with Daddy Day.
So Trey, let me ask probably one more question, and then we'll close things up. But so I guess in my experience in selling sponsorships, the selling is part of it, but the harder part is retention. Sort of how do you get them to come back year after year? And you're right now, it sounds like more often than not selling into the foundations of these companies, but in some cases selling into the marketing or business arm and building a business case. I guess this is maybe a two-part question. One is, do you see one of those doors, either the foundation or the marketing business door, being one that is more sustainable from a renewal standpoint? And then besides your sort of infographic and video, sort of post-event summary packages, are there any other strategies you use to create not just, it sounds like, year-over-year renewal, but also increasing the revenue from these sponsors as you go? So I guess one is preference for door you go in, and two is it's sort of strategy for continuing to build that relationship.
So good questions. Typically, I go in through whatever door I meet somebody in. So if somebody comes up to me, and I do a lot of speaking about entrepreneurship locally, if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I'm a account director at this local bank, how do we get involved? I'll say, well, let me explain the way you're going to see the biggest impact. And I start to do my little sales pitch. And then I go through them to find the right person in the organization. I go through them to determine what the best pitch is, what they think their organization will respond to. I help them think creatively. So, look, we want $25,000, and you're telling me the largest amount I can get out of your branch is $5,000. So let's look at $5,000 from there. Let's look at $10,000 from the foundation. Let's look at another $10,000 because this person's budget's a little higher, and we're going to do this event. And so I try to help the person help me think creatively about how to get to the number that we're at. And then once you build that that trust internally with whoever I meet, and that could be the CEO or it could be, account manager. And then I'm trying to have this look like a win for both the corporation and for the person who brought me in. And then we just sort of customize from there. And a lot of it's just asking directly, what budget do you have for this? How much money should I ask for? And then I always have a sponsorship package document, because in the end we end up customizing our sponsorships for every sponsor. But if you tell somebody, what do you want to do, we'll build a sponsorship package for you that they have nowhere to start from. So I always have a sponsorship package I send out. They look at it. They typically come back and say, well, we think this is great, but these 3 things we're not interested in. And I say, great, what are you interested in? And then we customize the package for them. But you've got to have that as a starting point. And then once you get in the door, and it may take months and months and months, I've had a bunch of organizations where for 3 years they've told me they were going to put me in their budget for the next year, and they haven't done it. And so I just tell them, look, do you want to support? Are you interested in supporting this? And then they say yes. And if they say yes, I say, look, the sooner you give me money, the sooner I'll quit calling you. And the more years you make me go without money, the more frequently I'm going to call you. And
do you have a gun when you ask this question?
No, I'm just persistent, and so I think, on the other hand, you got to be thoughtful about it. Microsoft has been a partner every year, and I can't tell you the amount of time I spend on that relationship and cultivating it, and more importantly, just making sure we get the money that we were committed, that it probably isn't worth the time I spend on it, but it's money that I have forecasted, and so I've got to go out and get that. But it's really a matter of just building those relationships, cultivating them, and just staying up with people. And we're in the process of implementing Salesforce, or a CRM, which you would imagine we should have done the first year. But when you start a company, and this is my experience, is you start a company, year 1, you create 100 processes. Year 2, you go down to 20 because you couldn't maintain the 100 processes you created. And then year 3 or 4, you start to get to the point where you're at, 35 to 50 and you're functioning well. And so we're at the point where Salesforce becomes necessary. But in the past, it's just kind of all in my head, or I write it down on, I make myself notes on my calendar, or I use, a project management system. But I also have a big, huge whiteboard in my office that's got every person that's ever given us money, how much they've given us, whether or not they've committed for this year. And you just got to stay on top. You got to be okay asking people for money. And the last thing, and this is advice that I was given by one of the best fundraisers I've ever met, is when you go in and you ask somebody for money, you need to research. You need to know how much money that there is in their budget. Don't ask them for $100,000 if they're only going to give you 10. On the other side, don't ask them for 10,000 if they could give you 25. But you go in there, you tell them what you want, you understand, you research it, you ask them for money, and then you do not say anything. You make them be the first person to talk. And it is amazing how much people don't want to say no. You have to remember, it's not their money. It's in a budget that they're supposed to spend one way or the other. So you're trying to help them understand how spending it with your organization is something that supports their goals, which a lot of these people, their goals are PR. Like, they want people to see that they support small businesses, that they support entrepreneurship. And in addition to that, they realize that one day these entrepreneurs will be or could be their customers. And so what I tell people is, I understand you can't spend $10 today for a $1 return today, but can you spend a $1 today for a $10 return over time? Now I'll say yes, and I said, okay, well, I think $1 to you is $50,000. And they say yes or no, and you go from there.
So Trey, we do need to wrap up. This has been fantastic, and I think golden silence is really the perfect place. It's if I were to ask you for one closing thought, that was really kind of brings us to, I think, a really great spot. You're absolutely welcome to stay with us. We're only going to be together another 15 minutes or so, just handling some quick business, or if you want to sign off, that's cool as well. But in either case, please, everybody, join me virtually and in person, thanking Trey, clapping. Excellent. We've got a standing ovation, I think, here. Trey,
Thanks,
actually,
Mom.
the wave, we're actually getting the wave now in person. So this is it's phenomenal. But thank you. And again, do you want to hang with us till the end, or do you want to cut out?
No, I'm happy to sit on that. My next meeting's in 15 minutes. That's perfect.
Oh,
I'll just go on and listen and learn.
Well, yeah. We'll see about the learn part, but we appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
So let's move on to our items. So again, we've got these monthly meetings, and certainly keep feeding topics. I think today, I certainly want your feedback, but I think today was spot on, and I know a lot of people are grappling with the sponsorship question. So we've got a couple of topics that we want to pop through over the next few minutes. Please feel free to chime in at any point if you have questions or thoughts. But I'm going to pass the ball to Joel to give any updates that he has on the sort of the marketing front. And this is specific to the statewide entrepreneur calendar. So what updates, Joel?
Excuse me. Basically, more of the same from the previous few months, but we have seen a focus, and we shifted on, which I think would be the next topic, towards the awards that we've spent some time on the end of December and early January, promoting that via the calendar, mainly through social media and Facebook, and we've done some email outreach on that. We've seen a nice uptick in visits to our social media site page, and a residual effect, which should have some strengthening ties down the road, is that we have seen more people liking the page because of the awards, which I think we found a little bit of a niche that increased our overall engagement outside of the people that already liked our page. In addition, we saw about 5x organic impressions from the post on last Friday due to folks on the call sharing it. Bill and Angelina were very instrumental in pushing the word out through their internal networks. So that has been focused on the awards and will have a long-term effect about just making more people seeing our stuff as well. But in addition to that, we're kind of doing a few more blogs via tech.co. We've reached out to them. They were at CES last week, so haven't heard back from them, but we'd like to demonstrate why awards are important to ecosystems, and then highlight through the Connecticut Awards and share that with the tech.co community, which should increase more eyeballs as well. So that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you. So some of you are participating on what we're calling the Gateway event team, or you could think of it as the top of the funnel. But this team is looking at essentially the inefficiency that happens not only here but in a lot of ecosystems around the disconnection between the entry-level events within an ecosystem, the startup weekends, et cetera, and the application programs, so all the accelerators and incubators and awards events, awards being grant opportunities, but the various sort of second-level programs, and quite often there's a real disconnect. In other words, there's not much of a feeder that happens from those entry-level events to the programs, and so we have a team that's actually been looking at that over the last few months in terms of ways to deal with it, and we think we've come up with something that could be pretty helpful. So we actually, and I'll circulate this in the post-event email, but we actually have the ability now in LaunchEZ, which is the platform that collects all of our calendar information and aggregates it out, to enter in application opening and closing dates. So as an example, we have a women-only or women venture accelerator in state, the refinery, they could put in all of their application opening and closing dates through the course of the year. Those can now be viewed in one place, all the application opening and closing dates by program. So whether that's a Connecticut Innovations program, a CI program, whether that's Reset or any of the accelerators, but we'll be able to actually, just like the calendar where we can see all the events in one place, we'll be able to see all the application opening and closing opportunities in one place and be able to look at them by audience type or target so that we can begin aligning our gateway events to that. So imagine having a women's startup weekend a month before the opening of the women's accelerator applications, or whatever whatever you want to align to. You could also have a social enterprise related startup weekend, or whatever to the application openings. And so the real goal, and I think this is a challenge in a lot of ecosystems, is you just get this sort of smattering of events, and it's kind of messy, and it probably should be somewhat messy, but I don't know that the answer is always more. It's sort of how do we make it better and more effective, and try to eliminate some of the redundancy and really create more synergy in the process. So again, we'll be forwarding out and I have now on the screen that sort of document that'll be forwarded out. It's very simple. It's 2 pages, big font, but essentially how to enter in LaunchEZ your application opening and closing dates. And again, this will begin to allow us to share this information with all the event organizers. So again, we can begin lining up to that. I'm going to take a breath for a sec. Any questions or thoughts about that?
We have an incubator and an accelerator coming out of Access 901.
Oh, awesome.
We're building it now, so we could probably be the first, or
please.
Hopefully there's others sooner, but
Yep.
we could certainly work with you to document how it could be done with, print screens and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. Please get them in there. Yeah, no, it's really simple. It'll take just a minute or two to put your application dates in. Cool. So I'm going to move on to the Connecticut Entrepreneurial Awards. So thank you to those who are working on this initiative and also helping to promote it. This was just launched, a week ago. So on January 1, I think, sent out the first notice of it. But the whole goal of the Entrepreneurial Awards is we have 9 categories, and the real goal is to identify not just the entrepreneurs and ventures that are making great waves in the state, but also to identify and celebrate the ecosystem elements that are supporting them, all the stakeholders that are doing great work as well. So that could be the spaces, it could be the programs, it could be the advocates that are out there. There are, again, 9 categories, and I'll actually put those up on the screen here. So you have venture, community builder, program, space, event, education, funding, corporate, institutional, and government. And so just so you understand the process that we're going through, so we have another about a week and a half or plus. We'll go to the 21st of the month in collecting nominations. Right now we're at about 35 nominees. We want to get to about 200. And so your continued promotion and also nominations of your members, of people in your community who you think, or organizations in your community who should be nominated, we really strongly encourage you to do that. Please, if you can, originate your own social media, or at least forward any of the ones that you see out there on this. But our goal is to get up to at least 200 nominations in this period, and it's going to be a 2-stage process. So we'll get the nominations in each of these categories, and then we'll actually have community voting on let's call them the finalists. So that we assume that there are going to be some sort of unqualified individuals or entities that will be nominated in various categories. So we'll clean those out or reappropriate them appropriately into the right categories, and then put out sort of a final ballot that the community can vote on. And we do have some categories, particularly in the venture space, that will be that will not only be community voted, but we'll also have a panel of judges voting on as well. And we're real excited about this. The event will likely be in New Haven, just because it's sort of equally inconvenient, I think, for all parts of the state. So that seems to be where we're going. And it'll be more than likely in a theater-type facility. So it'll be sort of a simple pre-event, but good networking and really focused on the awards and that celebration itself. So being in a theater-type facility will really help us do that and give more of a sort of that kind of feel. But the goal will be to be sort of a fast-moving and real fun event. And again, we're aiming at sort of later March, early April for this. But I'll take a breath. Questions, Danny?
Yeah. So this is Danny. Got a question about when I went to the website initially. I just checked again here. One of the things that confused me about the categories as a user going to essentially nominate people was just how wide open they were. Like, just take the venture thing you're talking about. You in your suggestions of best idea, fastest growing, best exit. Well, the distance between best idea and best exit is, I mean, if you were having a best exit award and a best idea award, then it'd be clear what to nominate for.
That's actually where we're going. So we had a good debate internally about how to do this, whether we should launch all the subcategories at the same time. And what we said is let's do the broad net first, and then that will help us define the subcategories, because if we don't get enough density in certain subcategories. So anyway, we could have gone one of either ways in doing this. So we were just doing this generally this first round, and then from that we'll define the subcategory. So if we get enough density in best idea, then there'll be a best idea award. Okay. So we're an MVP trying to work through the best way to do this. So yeah, I think it's a good point. I think if you see either an entity, individual, or whatnot that sort of fits those criteria, submit them, because that will help us create the category. I think that's really important. So there was very good debate internally about that.
And if we made it clear it's a Connecticut resident, right?
It's Connecticut.
Even if they're living outside. I mean, that's a student that's a college outside of the state.
I don't think that's a problem. I think that's fine.
I think if the bulk of the work is in Connecticut, that counts.
Yeah. It's a very tough panel of judges we have. So.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very rough.
Any other thoughts or questions on the awards? We've had some really good emails from people all around the state, and also I just looked at the nominations this morning. There are, and this is one of our goals, is we're actually finding people we didn't know about, organizations we didn't know about. That's probably our biggest goal in doing this. And very much we're seeing nominations from all corners of the state, even some of the quietest places. So that part of this has been really cool. So our next meeting, we're still settling on the date, but it now looks like it'll either be February 8th or 9th, and it'll be at the Grove in New Haven. And we have Lana Zumbrum from Fuse Co-working in Lincoln, Nebraska, will be helping us learn more about community building. So she's a real dynamo. Like Trey, she's a part of the Startup Champions Network and a phenomenal resource. So I think you'll all really enjoy connecting with her. So in any event, that's kind of the agenda we had. Is there, before we close up, are there any questions, issues, comments, opportunities that anyone wanted to make sure we talk about? Well, with that, I'm going to say good day. Trey, I know you're on mute, but please, it was awesome. We really, really appreciate it. Again, the wave is going through the room, applauding you, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks in Tampa.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your week.
All right. Thanks. You too, Trey. Take care.
Bye.
Bye now. Bye, everybody.